Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's show. I'm Steve Buors, CEO of Reshift Media, and I will be your host for today. I'm joined by Ruthie Burd, who describes herself as a wife, a mom, and a friend. Very apt description, I would say, having known Ruthie for a few years. Now, for the last 30 years, Ruthie has been the woman behind the Lunch Lady, Canada's largest provider of individually prepared hot meals for kids in elementary schools. This award-winning 100% Canadian company has grown through franchising, and today the Lunch Lady is available through a network of dedicated franchisees in 4 different provinces. The company is on a mission to make it easy for all kids to have access to wholesome meals at school, regardless of means. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the show, Ruthie.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward
And
to the conversation.
yeah, me too. So obviously, I've known you for a few years, Ruthie. I love the mission, by the way, to make it easy for all kids to have access to wholesome meals at school, regardless of means. I love that. Absolutely fantastic. Now, I wanted to jump right in. Our topic today is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of the things I found out is that you are one of the founding members of the Canadian Franchise Association's DEI committee. So I'm curious, can you share what inspired your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Okay, I would say, uh, to be honest, it was just the way I was brought up. And probably at some point again in this conversation, I'll reference my father. My dad was a United Church minister, and he brought me up to believe that everyone is deserving of our kindness and our respect and our empathy. And so it really isn't something that I woke up one morning or heard something or was influenced by something. This is just how I was raised. And he also taught me that you model who you are by your behavior and your actions. And so it's just always been part of my life. Additionally, I have a son on the autism spectrum. And for me, that was also quite a life-changing event. And it made me reconsider how everyone fits in, how everyone needs to be welcome, regardless of their ability, their gender, their race, their uh, developmental awareness. There's a place for everybody in a just society. So everyone has to be here. So the business that I started really was to work around my son's speech therapy. And I
Hmm.
didn't know anything about cooking, really, to be honest, no interest in cooking. I like ideas, though, and I needed to fill a need in my own family. And that's how the lunch lady started, sort of more or less by accident. And how it grew was when I started to franchise, I thought I couldn't be the only woman in my position who had something a little bit different about their own family situation, still wanted to use their gray cells, and still wanted to be able to create something meaningful in the community while serving the needs of their family. And so in the beginning, it was all about women, really. It was all our franchise partners were, for the most part, female. And so the big diversity moment, I guess, for us was when we considered, well, maybe men could also be lunch ladies. And so we have, there are male lunch lady providers or men lunch lady providers. And that was the big thing for us. But it was always quite different, a very different sort of business, very community oriented. So perhaps in some ways, a lot of those values that I was brought up were really instrumental in determining how the company grew and why we grew through franchising.
I love that. So I just learned more new things. I had no idea that your father was a minister. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And having known you for some while, I can say you certainly exude those characteristics. So what an amazing story. I love that. So let's talk a little more about the lunch lady. So you've talked already about how important it was from a value system. Is there anything in particular you do that helps make the lunch lady an inclusive and welcoming environment, both I guess maybe for your team, but also maybe for people that you're serving lunch to? Take it anywhere you want with that.
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to. Well, because again, as I mentioned, I had a child on the spectrum, well, young adult now, 34.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Early on, we ended up changing his diet. And in those days, you were kind of left to your own devices. There weren't the same availability of programs and research and everything else that we have now, 30 years ago. But we ended up trying a gluten-free and dairy-free diet with him. And really, in our case, it did make a difference to his behavior. And sometimes things happen in your life and you go, oh, wait a minute. uh, this is my situation. What about other people? Again, that's that upbringing, I suppose you could say. So from very early on, it was important for us to have an inclusive program, just the nature of the program. So uh, parents who had children that were diabetic, they needed nutritional information to know how many carbs and how much fiber was in the food so that they could determine how much insulin their child needed. Then, of course, we're a very diverse country, and there are students that only eat halal meats. There are students that are vegetarian. There are students that have egg allergies. Nut allergies goes without saying. We all our kitchens are peanut and nut free.
That's a big deal
Um,
for sure. Absolutely.
yeah,
You don't want
so
to accidentally give someone some peanuts there.
no, no, absolutely not. So it became important. What do parents need? And I think that parents want to know that other individuals, businesses, moms, care about the needs of their child and want their child to be part of the program. So often what you see in many meal programs that happen at school, because there's a limited number of choices, if you have an allergy or a food intolerance, there may not be an option for you. And so you're excluded from that program. And it became really important for us as we grew that training was part of our franchisee training. So anyone who wanted to participate in the program would be able to. And as we've grown, and we now have some contracts in Nova Scotia and British Columbia serving universal meals. And I know it's a challenge in the school environment for meeting the needs of diverse students, but we continue to encourage in those programs an acceptance for making sure that the menus meet the needs of the maximum number of students. You can't please everyone, of course. You can't there are some allergies that are just too complex to really feel comfortable managing, that are, multiple, with multiple different components to them, different allergens. But wherever we can, we really think, what would we want someone to do for our child, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, and I just love the fact you use the word inclusion multiple times there. And that's so important in school, particularly, if someone has an allergy, like you don't want to be singled out. You don't want to feel like, you can't participate, you can't have the same lunch as your friends. I just love that, Ruthie. I really loved everything you said, honestly. But I loved the fact that you kept saying inclusion. It was just amazing.
Mhm. And when you have a child with a disability as well, of course, inclusion becomes a whole different topic of conversation because you're always torn the needs of your own child and the needs of the rest of the classroom, right? And it's always a balancing act because you really need to be able to consider the family of a child who does not have learning challenges to make sure they're getting adequate um, attention and that they're being stimulated and encouraged to learn in the classroom versus the needs of your own child who may be quite disruptive in a classroom. And so, again, just considering the different needs of people, it just became something that you're always aware of. It just sort of becomes part of who you are. And also the needs of our son. He's still quite an autistic person. He likes his life. The speech therapy paid off. I got to say that. But he'll
Great.
probably always be with us, right? Living at home. So really the important thing is to consider for him, yes, we wanted him fully integrated as much as possible, right? I mean, this we all think this is something we can feel really, really good about. But what about him? If he can't relate socially to his peers in a classroom, is that really going to be a good environment for him, where he's sort of always on the outside, but kind of the token autistic boy in the class. So at a certain age, when his peers became more interested in what each other was doing, or things that the kids going through puberty are interested, boys, girls, relationships, whatever. At that point, uh, we decided to put him in a segregated class with other young people who had different types of abilities. And that was the best thing we could have done for him, because then he could follow a lot of the conversations that were going on and was able to actually continue to make friends as he got older. Some of whom he still sees on occasion today, though I have to say when they meet, their idea of a good time is a little different than perhaps of ours is, a little less conversation. But they all say they had a wonderful time. So
Yeah,
there you go.
as long as they're having fun, that's all that matters. And
So,
I, yeah,
yeah, so it's really considering, I think, always where we go is we all want the best for our children, but not every child is going to be first in the class. How do children feel about themselves? How do they develop their confidence? And I think that's really important to EDI, and having a child who is different makes me more sensitive to other children who feel excluded for whatever reasons, whether it's a gender identity, sexual preference, religion, race in a classroom. It just makes you more sensitive. How can you make them feel included? Because we all belong, right?
I love that. We all belong. Well, so let's take this from the great experience, obviously you've had, running the Lunch Lady. Let's talk about franchising as a whole. So, what do you think some common misconceptions are that franchisors might have about DEI, and how do you help guide them through the CFA's committee work that you're a part of?
Mm. Well, I think one of the things that's really come to the fore in our meetings, and particularly at the most recent convention where we held a couple of different roundtables, including one is EDI dead, right? Which I thought was pretty controversial, and we had some interesting conversation there. Is that like so many things that have a label, uh, individuals are nervous or scared of them. It's like some kind of construct that's being forced on you, right? That's going to force you to have more meetings that don't go anywhere, or it's just words on a piece of paper that makes a company look good, or it doesn't have any meaning. But really, as one of our members spoke about in our roundtable, the whole concept of EDI is really about the golden rule. Just treat other people as the way you'd want to be treated. And if you look at it that way, what can you do in your workplace to make people feel included, welcome, where they can have a different idea than you? Which is where a lot of positive change, as you know, comes from different ideas, where they can feel comfortable having a different idea and expressing it without being made to feel their idea is ridiculous or foolish. Because often when you have two different ideas, you get the third idea. And I think that leads to innovation. And I don't think we would have gotten through COVID as a business without all those different ideas about how we could navigate that came from franchise partners and from our peers at the CFA and from others, a couple of other groups that I belong to. So I I think often it's the words that are off-putting. It's, what kind of rules and regulations do I have to bring in? I already am doing enough stuff. Or what kind of rules and regulations do I have to follow? And what does it mean anyways? I've read that, it doesn't work, or it doesn't mean anything. But that's like saying being nice to other people doesn't work in life, right? Which is not true, right? So I think that's with a lot of things, that we get caught up in the language of something and don't dig down and see what the meaning is. Because if we look at so many of the businesses that are part of the CFA, and I'm sure you look at your own business too, we all have values. We all have our moral compass, right? We have to be members of the CFA because we have promised that we'll uphold the values and the ethics of the franchise, the best in franchising, right? Like the best that it has to offer. And so if we look at what we have, we all have aspects of EDI built into our companies. We may not call it that, And, now I think there's a few more letters we have to add to EDI isn't significant. There's a few more letters, but it's all really part and parcel of the same thing. People want to be seen, heard, appreciated, welcomed, included, and really, we would like to say we can legislate fairness and justice, social equity. You really can't. It starts with attitudes, and attitudes come from conversations. And I think that the greatest thing that EDI can bring to any organization is a place to talk about ideas that matter to us as a society, or matter to us as individuals, matter to us as a group, and how we want to be perceived and how we want to be remembered and how we want to be seen.
Hey, Ruthie, these are powerful words. And I have to say, I've never heard someone boil EDI down to the golden rule in such a simple and powerful way. And it's so true. Like, if you really strip away all the nomenclature and, as you say, the rules and what boxes do I need to tick? At the end of the day, the golden rule should be what you follow, right? Like, treat people as I would like to be treated.
And it's
I
old,
love that. I'm gonna
nothing new.
I'm you're absolutely right. It's not a new concept, but I'm super stealing it. Like that. That is amazing. Well, so you've mentioned a lot about just how inclusion and diversity of ideas. So let's talk about your franchisees.
Mhm.
So franchising by its very nature is a community rooted business, right?
Yes.
You have people in those communities interacting with students every day. So do you see a role for franchises in advancing social equity beyond the workplace as part of just society in general? Or I guess, how do you see it fitting is probably the better way to ask that question.
I would say probably in our case, a lot of the individuals who are attracted to our brand as either franchisees or who are attracted to working for our franchisees and delivering to schools already are community oriented at some level, right? They are often believe that school food matters, kids should have good nutrition, all these things. Like serving kids, like serving all kids, a lot of them have been involved on school councils or involved in the lunchroom at some level. So it's a certain kind of individual they'll be attracted to our kind of business for sure. Um, Other ways that franchise partners can help is because, again, as I'm mentioning my son, some of our franchisees do also have children who have disabilities and health conditions. And in other kitchens are involved with March of Dimes and other organizations, and do have uh, employees who have come to them through those contacts in their kitchens. And it's a little bit different because when you're often working with people with disabilities, because my own son, Bren, works at our sister business, Kids Kitchen. Uh,
Hey, I love that.
yeah, all right. He puts labels on lids. Not what I'd like to be doing, but he loves it. And what the takeaway there is the good workplace has something for everyone. Has a place for there's some things some people love to do, some things some people just don't want to do. And so the whole idea of work somehow having someone in your kitchen who has a disability, for example, means that they need to be working for you 8 hours, and what are you going to find them to do? They don't necessarily look at work the way you're looking at it. They don't have the fears you have about these particular situations necessarily. And the idea of going to work, being part of the team, it could be 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But there has to be a sense of accomplishment and a beginning and an end to the job, right? So I always, it warms my heart when, of course, when our kitchens are also showing that side of themselves in the community. But it's really, I don't know, I think just a lot of the people in our organization just are inclined that way. So uh, they, I think of one of our franchise partners who's in Markham, and uh, she often um, can be found downtown, um, working with an organization that distributes meals to the homeless, right? So feeding people, is an act of love at some level. And so you're feeding people who need you and who are hungry and who you think should have a nutritious lunch. I think I would like to think at some point, maybe in the future somewhere, that the name The Lunch Lady is just associated with that kind of open, caring commitment to kids in the community, making sure they have good things to eat. And that is everybody, that includes everybody. So in our hiring practices, we're creating jobs often for moms, new Canadians, who are working around their children's schedule. So um, I think it means that then the mom has a job that fits her schedule, but it's not what she would find in maybe other brands where she would be the one working nights or working weekends, right? So the the business, looking back, I guess there was a lot of thought that went into how it got set up and structured. But then again, maybe there wasn't. It just turned out to sort of follow along. I just sort of used my best judgment and created or tried to duplicate what had worked really well for me. And of course, now I have partners, and the business has changed a lot. But I think fundamentally, those core values that have always been part of the business are still there.
I love that.
I hope
So
I answered your question. I
you,
do
you,
wonder a bit.
you absolutely did, Ruthie, and I'm enjoying hearing the story. I really am. So yeah, no, I'm not going to interrupt you when you're on a good roll like that. It was fantastic. So as someone who's obviously been on an amazing journey, really involved in the community, any advice you'd give to franchise leaders who are earlier in that journey? Maybe they're just starting their EDI journey. Maybe they're in a small or they're an emerging brand. Is there any advice you'd give them, as if you could give back to a younger Ruthie just starting out the lunch lady, anything you'd share?
Well, I would say that they're probably further along than they know, because if they've started and they're looking at franchising, first thing they should do is, why are they doing what they're doing? That's the first thing. Why do you want to include other people in your business? I realize that it allows you to grow your brand more quickly in some respects, but there's also there's risks involved because you're not in control of everything, right? So as a
Right.
franchisor. So what is the reason for wanting to franchise? And to look at themselves, right? There's two sides of each of us. We have our financial balance sheet and we have our personal balance sheet. What is it you want for yourself? Like, who do you want to look at in the mirror? What is it you want to create? What do you really believe right now? Like, start with you and what it is that you hope to achieve for yourself, not just business wise, but in terms of yourself, your personal growth as a person. And if you do that, you'll find that oftentimes you already have some notion of what this concept of EDI means. How do you treat other people? Are you going to be willing to listen to other people who have different ideas? There's nothing worse than a founder sometimes. We can be the curse of our own business, right? Because we're used to it a certain way, but we have to allow for new ideas and different ideas. Are you willing to allow for other people to be part of your business, to augment your head office as it grows with skills that you don't necessarily have, right? How are you going to pick those people, right? Are you going to be picking for someone that is just like you, or are you going to be picking someone who challenges you? Because diversity isn't just about our race or our religion or our gender or anything else. It's about how we think mentally, right? Pick people who challenge you, who are better than you are, right? That will help you grow and go forward, right? So I would tell a new franchisor, first, don't quit. Second, ask a lot of questions and join the CFA. And it's such a friendly and open organization. And find brands you admire and ask them what they did. Ask them what they've got in place. It doesn't have to be necessarily so overwhelming or so detailed or so organized, because in the beginning days of being a franchisor, my gosh, like your time is not your own. Like one more thing or one more process or one more policy, you make you want to put forks in your eyes, right? So so sometimes you just go out, make friends, and ask questions. I remember when I first started, Mac Voisin from M&M Meat Shops. I remember I just reached out to him and said, I'm a new franchisor. You've been around for a while. I know your product. And they sponsored the golf tournament that was one of the sponsors of the golf tournament from my son went to a school called Giant Steps, and they were one of the sponsors. So I would help out as a parent volunteer, in the burger tent, and they were so generous and everything. And again, the kind of company I thought I'd like to associate with. So I just reached out. Would you mentor us, right? And so generous, and actually gave us a copy of their franchise agreement. Like just gave us a copy
Really?
of the agreement.
Really?
Yeah, he did, right? And
Wow.
here's all about disclosure and just tips and tricks. Now, there
Wow.
was no EDI at the time, but I remember him saying to me, treat all your franchise partners the same. Fair dealing is the most important thing. And is not fair dealing really the principle of EDI? Fair dealing with people. And that's the basis of the Wishart Act, right? In Ontario, is that franchising has to be seen as a fair relationship between the franchisor and the franchisee. So anyways, that's what I would tell them. If they had time to listen to all that, I would,
Well,
I would
maybe
try and find a way to condense it.
some of them might have just heard it, Ruthie. They might have just listened to it right
There you
now. That's
go.
amazing. All right, last question. This has been just amazing. But last question for today. So, as you look ahead,
Mm.
and as someone who's again with a ton of experience, what are your hopes for the future of EDI and Canadian franchising? And is there anything you'd recommend how other franchise organizations can get involved, maybe in a CFA or the committee?
I think it's always good to volunteer your time somewhere on a committee. EDI is something certainly that resonates with me, but there's certainly a lot of other committees where you can get to know your peers better, and also so your peers can get to know what you believe in and what you can contribute. We're all pebbles in each other's ponds after all, right? So I would say that I'm very hopeful for the conversation that EDI has created, especially considering the more or less the unfriendly environment for EDI south of the border. I think that's made us north of the border talk about it more, just as we talk more about buying Canadian and supporting our local businesses. So much more. It's also engaged us more to have these conversations. But when people talk about Canada, they always talk about how polite and how kind and how nice we are. Generally, this is a reputation that we seem to have. And we know that we're just as imperfect as everybody else, but maybe we make an extra effort to try. So I think that it's important to honor how we think the world sees us, right? And bring that into our business environment. And I think by and large, a lot of companies do a pretty nice job of it. Because even though there are many, many large franchisors that are part of the CFA, the individuals that work in those companies, when you sit down and talk with them, there's all that common bond. We all worry about the well-being of our employees. We all want our franchisees to be successful. We all want to be welcoming to our customers. And in fact, so many even of our franchise partners got their start working for bigger brands back in the day, like McDonald's or Tim Hortons, where they learned a lot about customer service and how to deal with their customers. So I, I'm really hopeful that we can have a uniquely Canadian solution to how we talk about EDI. Maybe over time, we can replace a little bit of the jargon. Sometimes I get a little tired with all the acronyms
Don't we
uh,
all?
and the labels and everything else, right? Because I certainly, when we're out and about, I wouldn't want to be labeled as the mom of the autistic boy, right? I am just Ruthie, and I think everybody else just wants to be themselves as well and be recognized and accepted as who they are. So I hope. Sometimes I think the labeling and the naming and the acronyms and everything else that they create a kind of a elitism of their own, maybe, but it's really the core values that underline them that we should be celebrating more than the initials.
Well said. I think that's the perfect spot to leave it. Ruthie, this has been just amazing. I've certainly enjoyed the conversation. I hope everyone watching has enjoyed it. Thank you again, Ruthie, and have yourself an amazing day.
Well, thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful day too. Eat some carrots.